I was sitting on a bus from Davis to Sacramento going to college, and I sat next to this really beautiful black man. This was like 1980. And he looks at me and he says, "Where are you from?" And I say, "I'm from Iran." "Where are you from?" I ask him. He says, "I was born here." Then he says, "What's your name?" I said, "Amir." And then he says, "Is that your real name?" I said, "Yeah." And I said, "So what's your name?" He says, "Well, I found my name and my name is Muhammad. Have you found yours?" And when you're young and when you're like a punk, you don't really think about these things. As you get a little older, you know, you go through a few midlife crises and 5, 6 divorces, and your kids die and your parents die. You sit back and you say, you know, the hell. Your name is Fig, you hate figs. And so the question is, have you found your name yet? Any questions or comments before we talk about the irrelevant things for the next hour and 15 minutes?
The question is based on the lecture.
If there is some.
So again, can I record you?
It's up to you. Sure, yeah. Anyone, anything? How about like...
Did you get that last year, or did you get that a couple of weeks ago? Yes, a couple of years ago. I was there.
Okay.
Education here in Jarma is very different than Mongolia, India, Tibet, Iran, Afghanistan. So anyone else? Yes, Elham. Do you have any like Muslim questions? Middle East? Yes, Matt. Yeah, okay. I'm really interested to hear that.
I was looking up when Ramadan starts this year.
Yeah.
And also Lunar New Year. So is Ramadan tied to the lunar cycle the same way that other holidays are?
A solar calendar, if that's how you want to describe it, is always stationary. You know, December 25th is the time where Mary and Jesus got it on and Jesus was born. About 9 months before that. Lunar is very different. It changes all the time. It's like emotions and moods. They come and they go. You have no idea where you're going, what you're standing on, so you're always changing. But I think the more interesting question is, what is fasting? Why do people fast? That would be a good question. Your question is just ridiculous. Imagine, Matt, that you're an addict. Imagine that you have been drinking for a while, or smoking for a while, or sexing for a while. It doesn't really matter, you know, but you've been an addict. And what all addicts have in common, whether you happen to be Malcolm X, addicted to the political sphere, or you happen to be, I don't know, Eminem, addicted to foul language, you know, you pick. All addicts create habits. Some habits are good, some habits are bad. Some habits impede your growth. Some habits, in fact, are good for you. It's like you go to the library and just read books, you know. And every time you read a good book, you have access to a new perspective about who you are, what you are, the world, and all that stuff. When habits are formed, inside your brain, there's a highway that's built. Now remember, you have 3 different bodies. Are you taking notes, Matt? Yeah. You have, hello, you have a physical body, Matt. You have an emotional body, and you have an intellectual body. You don't yet have a soul, so we're not going to talk about the spiritual part. And so when become addicted, your physical body, your emotional body, your intellectual bodies, they have habits now. In other words, you do something over and over and over and over again, that it just becomes part of who and what you are. You know, it's like, I had a student some years ago. I won't mention his name. This was like almost 20 years ago. When he was 3, his father forced him to have sex with a prostitute. Hello. And when he said no at the age of 3, he suffered some fists, some kicks, and eventually he had no choice but to have sex. And he had to do this over and over again for the next few months until his father released him from this particular bondage. When he came to my class, he was 20, and he was angry. You could just see it on his face. Hi. So, he had been thinking and reflecting and mulling over all these experiences for the past 20 years that anger was just part of who and what he was. And so one day he comes to my office and he says, everything that I touch turns into dust. I want to create for myself a brand new life. How do I go about doing that? And so what he's really asking is, how do I fast? How do I abstain? How do I walk away from being nourished by certain things in life that bring about anger and violence? Now, you can have inspired moments, and inspired moments mean nothing. It's like pouring some fuel on charcoal, put some flame to it, and it goes up, and after a couple of seconds, it just dies. You know, like this movement that you have in Minneapolis, or what happened in Oakland some years ago, or the marches that you see in Iran, my country, that's taking place. That's what inspiration is. You're inspired to fall in love, you get married, reality hits, you realize you're the same old shit that you've always been, and your companion leaves you. So inspiration lasts for maybe a week or two, if you're lucky. It's usually more like a minute. And usually people are inspired. Fasting, this different version of it is you've come to understand a few things about yourself, and you're at a place in life where you're able to make sacrifices. I mean, real sacrifices, you know? Like you want to pick up the phone and call your ex, but you say, she is no good for me. And you put the phone down. And instead of calling her, you just stalk her. Hello, Leah. How are you? It's good to see you. It's awful, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, your chemistry class.
It's at 9:30.
Okay. Anyone in this class taking chemistry? Are you good? I mean, did you get like an A or a B?
I don't know.
Did you pass the class?
I'm just taking it.
Oh, you're no good. Anyone who has taken chemistry and you passed the class?
Yeah, I had my little cousins tutoring me.
You have what?
I had younger cousins that were in college tutoring me. But it worked.
Well, can you get her in touch with your little cousins?
Yes.
Anyways, so anything else? Nathan? How old are you?
38.
That's it? Are we done? For those of you who came in late or new, make sure to see me after class. I can mark you here so I don't drop you accidentally. Leah, did you have your hand up?
But I can ask you a question.
Sure.
Um, This is based on what we talked about in last class, and
She has baby questions for you. Yeah, after class. Yeah, she just. Yeah, sorry, Leah.
this is based on what we talked about in the Monday class. and the
Yesterday?
question
Okay.
That I submitted. Is it possible for a person to manufacture their own profound experience that you previously talked about?
Can someone create their own profound experiences? You know, Leah, today after class, I'm going to run to 7-Eleven and buy a few lottery tickets. And I'm hoping to win a couple $1 million, like 230 million bucks. I've never had that much money in the bank. I doubt very much I will win. But sometimes I wonder what would happen if I was to win such a profound amount of money. Money gives you power. And whenever you have power, you get drunk off of that. And I don't know if I'm going to be a good drunk or a bad drunk. I mean, it's a profound experience. You know, money, one of the things that St. Francis of Assisi talked about, for those of you who may not know, he was one of these Christian saints around the 14th century, if I'm not mistaken. He was born in a very, very rich family. His father was in a textile business. He was in the battlefield. He had killed some people. On his way back, he had a vision of Jesus. And he went into a coma for a couple of weeks. They thought him to be dead. But he arose. He awoke. And he basically said, I'm going to give my name back to my father because that's not really my name. I'm going to give my love back to my mom because that's not really who I really want to love. And he walked around naked. He took off all of his clothes. And he said, you can just call me a beggar. Okay. He had argued that one of the evils of money is that it gives you access to the future. In other words, it allows you to plan for tomorrow. And here's the problem about tomorrow. You have no idea if you're going to be alive. And it's much better for you to focus on today as opposed to tomorrow. Now, I don't know if I completely agree with that because we are kind of three kind of different animals. Part of us lives in the past. And because you're engaged animals, a good amount of us lives in the future. And how you use the present is you kind of try to solve some of the issues of the past, try to figure out how to bring the future into a reality. So that's how our present are spent. So you need money to plan for that. You know, St. Francis of Assisi is not completely accurate in his assessment. So, can you have a profound experience? The answer is yes. I mean, love is a profound experience. You really do become like an Abraham in the Judaic, Christian, Islamic tradition. You're willing to sacrifice almost anything under the sun for your beloved. You know, but you also act stupid. And love also allows you to imagine that the object of your passion is something you possess. So it makes you possessive, it makes you jealous, it makes you envious, you know. So can you have profound experience? The answer is yes. Will you get drunk off of it? The answer is yes. Will you be a good drunk? Probably not. Like anything else, it takes a good amount of education for you to tame the power you have, you know. One of the things about Don Juan, for those of you who know his story, is that he's like a Brad Pitt. Really good looking guy. He doesn't really need to talk very much. There is something about the way he looks, his facial expressions, the nature of his eyes, his gaze, the tone of his voice, they're just very attractive, you know. And every time you go to a gathering, to a party, you're just standing there. You're not saying anything. You might as well just be completely like mute. And yet people come to you. Now, what is it that we all have in this class? We have instincts. One of the most powerful instinctual powers that you have inside you is the desire for sex. It's not given to you by God. It's just there. Like your desire to shit or to pee or to eat. It's just part of who and what you are. It's instinctual. Now, it's going to take a long, long, long time. And Brad Pitt has to go through many women, many men, many animals to come to realize, you know, maybe I should understand relationships a little. My passion and desire for sex, to understand pleasure, what it does, how it guides me, motivates me, inspires me. And then maybe I'll sit back and say, you know what? What I really want is stability. Stability creates happiness. Pleasure, not so much. So the answer to your question is you either have to be profoundly just evolved, and I don't know really how that happens, you know. Someone like a Beethoven is a really, really awful teacher. Someone like a Jesus Christ, even worse teacher. And the reason why these are bad teachers is because the moment they were born, they were gifted. They didn't have to sacrifice anything. Someone like Moses, he's a great teacher. Why? He loves his father, he loves his mother, he loves his kingdom, he has his eye on being a pharaoh, he's in love with a woman, you know, he's lived in this sanctuary for all these years, and all of a sudden he comes to realize his name is not really his real name, and his parents are not real, and he's not real. But does he have the stamina to make sacrifice? The answer is yes. Now the difference between Jesus and Moses is that Moses knows what sacrifice is, and what it takes, and how hurtful it is, and what it means to walk away from your parents, from a woman that you love. Jesus doesn't know any of that stuff. Jesus simply has a big mouth. He comes forth and says, you know what? Just come and follow me. Why? You know, you should just seek the kingdom of God. If someone asks him, for example, well, who's going to take care of my elder parents? You know, the only thing he'll tell you is, why do you store your treasures down here? And your treasure could be anything. It could be money, it could be a car, it could be a relationship, it doesn't really matter. You know. So you could again have experiences, yes. There's a good chance that those experiences may contaminate you and corrupt you. You know, one of the best stories that you'll ever find in any of these texts, whether philosophical or religious, is the story of the prodigal son in the New Testament. Gospel of Luke, if I'm not mistaken, or Matthew. You know, that, you know, he has like $50,000 in his pocket. And what do young people do? Young people, because they lack experience, the only thing they know what to do with power is to waste it, to spend it foolishly. It's only in laws that you begin to understand, you know. So that's my answer to it.
And what exactly does it take to extract meaning from these experiences? Like, how did Carlos Castaneda come to understand what Don Juan was teaching him?
Okay. For those of you, this is Leah, by the way. She took a class last semester. So in her free time, she just comes by to harass me. Castaneda was a PhD student in the 1960s or 70s at UCLA doing anthropology. He was at the final stages of his program, which is he has to write his dissertation, which is this long essay that you have to present to the committee of maybe 4 or 5, and they have to read your essay and then either approve or give you a PhD, or they just say, you know what, we're not happy with what you've written, you have to go back and redo this. Castaneda wanted to take the easy way, which is he wanted to just go somewhere, do some interviews, come back and write some essays. So he goes to Arizona, and he was focused on writing about drugs, peyote, psychedelics. But there are two, I suppose, different versions of doing psychedelics. One, it just has become part of a culture. It's a popular movement. It's like when you drive on the highway, and all the bulletin boards out there says, you know, they can give you a bucket of weed for like $5. Every 10 minutes there's a billboard. And you have to figure out, do you want to go to this company or that dispensary? The more difficult and mature and evolved path is you come to realize that there is just something about life that doesn't fit you well. You want some things from life, but life doesn't have the power to give those things to you. Physical life always kind of shortchanges you. And you're looking for meaning, you're looking for substance, you're looking for depth. You can't find that in love, you can't find that in Laney or Stanford or Yale. So you say, you know what, I'm going to go out there and look for a Socrates, or I'm going to go out there and look for the second coming, like a Jesus Christ or a Malcolm X, whatever your hero should be. And so, but he didn't really know what that meant for him. So he goes to Arizona, and his friend says, that old man you see over there, he knows a good deal about the sort of drugs you're interested in. He runs into this man, he goes to this man, looks him in the eye, and something happens to him. Now, that is the first indicator. Once in a while, you and I find ourselves in the presence of someone. It can be a man, it can be a woman, it can be a movie, but it's usually living, quacking human being. And they do something to you, and you don't know what that is. But you feel attracted, you feel repulsed, there's a good amount of fear and anxiousness. And because Castaneda finds himself profoundly nervous, he just rambles on for the next 2-3 hours. Eventually the bus comes, this old man gets on the bus, looks at this kid and says, I'm out, you suck as a human being. But he leaves an impression in Castaneda. And he goes back to Los Angeles, but he can't get rid of this experience. Talk about profound experiences. Now, usually when you and I have an experience that kind of lifts your soul out of your body and pushes you to reflect, and reflection most often is a very difficult, painful, and yet exciting, inspiring event, you know. And so he says, I need to go back and figure out who this guy is. So he goes on this quest, not for God, not for Jesus Christ, not for Socrates, but for Don Juan. Some old guy who lives somewhere in Mexico. Eventually finds him. And he says, I am your kingdom of God. I can give you what you're looking for, but I can't give it to you just yet because you're not ready. So Castaneda is trained. He has to learn the culture of drugs. Not the culture of drugs according to the hippie movement in the 1960s, and not the culture that you see in the billboards on the highway, and not the culture that lives in Oakland. Okay? The authentic, genuine culture of people who are proficient in the art of psychedelics. Visions. After he understands the culture a little bit, he now needs to understand the culture of plants, the culture of the roots, and the wisdom that these plants can offer him. Okay? Plant teachers. And then when he is ready after a few years, then Don Juan said, it's now time. Now, what is interesting about this particular experience is you have a really, really good teacher who allows Castaneda to experience with psychedelics or peyote just a couple of times, no more. All you really need is just a couple of visions. You don't need to keep running into Malcolm X's. You just need one Malcolm X a couple of times to kind of show you your potentialities. That's all you need. And having said all of that stuff, I have forgotten your question completely. This is what happens to you when you're a little older. So what was your question?
How did Castaneda extract meaning of your
Oh, Castaneda worked with this man for a number of years. And then he went into hiding. And his only students were women. And there are lots of stories about him. And he has about maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 books out there. Some people argue that he didn't really write those books. Some people argue that these books are simply figments of his own imagination, you know. But anyone, I mean, if you can sit in your hotel room and write Harry Potter books, you're an amazing human being, you know. So if Castaneda, even if these books are part of his imaginative works, you know, for a guy to sit and produce 50 books, beautiful. You don't get wisdom, Leah. Initially, what happens is you collect data, i.e. information. You don't know why, you don't know what they are, that's the only thing you know how to do. You know, it's like near the end of the semester, you drive through the town of Berkeley. Some of the students have graduated, so they leave brand new stuff on the sidewalk and you put them in your car and you take them home. Okay, that's what we do. We collect information. So we become prostitutes, intellectual prostitutes. We just, any book that's interesting, we sleep with it. You know, if you happen to be a little bit more evolved and mature, you kind of sit somewhere for a while and you piece together all these information together. And you suture them. You sew them together. And then you gain what we call knowledge. Like I can come to class and give you a 5-hour talk about Malcolm X. I'm not black. I don't know the history. I don't know the culture. I've read the book a few times. I can come to class and talk about it. I can talk for 50 hours about Karl Marx or Jesus Christ. But I'm none of those people. I don't care to be one of those people. But I have read them enough and talked about them enough to piece together the information. And then you can walk back home and say, you know what, I have this instructor, he's very knowledgeable about ABCD. There needs to come a time where you grow very, very tired of information. And you have to become disgusted with the knowledge that lives inside you. Because remember, you accumulated knowledge and information because you thought they were your Jesus Christ. They're going to lead you out of your bondage. But at a certain point you say, you know, I have all this stuff in my head. They don't do anything. One of the best examples of this is Aldous Huxley. Huxley was one of those, he had this beautiful mind, you know, he soaked everything in. And he wrote wonderful books. And at a certain point, he calls one of his friends in Canada, who first coined the word psychedelic. I forget his name. Anyways, he said, listen, you know, I have read so much and I know so much, but they're just dead inside me. You know, I read Malcolm X and it's beautiful. How do I become him? I read Jesus Christ and it's beautiful. How do I become him? I read Socrates and I want to be like him. I have all this information, but they don't do anything for me. So this guy from Canada goes in, sets the physical environment, and Huxley has an experience. Now it could go wrong, but not for Huxley. And after his experience, he writes this book, you know, Doors of Perception, that there are these experiences in life that they baptize you. How they do it, no one knows. I mean, one of the things you need to understand about education, it's something you guys may not know. Administrators and faculty members, both ridiculous people, they sit together and they say, okay, how do we make our students smarter? SLOs, Student learning outcomes. You come to this class knowing nothing, you will leave this class knowing a few things. But then the bigger question is, okay, so you know a few things about Socrates or philosophy. What do you do with them? And the answer is you can't do anything. Life is far too busy, you're far too distracted, you don't really have the proper amount of interest inside you, so eventually you trash them, you forget them. And once in a while, of course, you go out on dates, and one of the ways that you trap the person sitting the opposite side is, well, do you know much about Socrates? And this woman says, no, who is he? And then you talk and talk and talk for 5 hours, and the woman says, oh my God, I'm having an orgasm. And then before you know it, you're in love, and she's in love. That's what you use the information for. So when you talk about how do you extract wisdom, the truth is, I don't think anybody knows. I think everybody fakes it, And don't forget, this is the American culture. It's a how-to culture. So whenever someone asks, how do I become wise? It's like IKEA. Go to the basement, aisle 55, shelf 24, pick that box, go home, read the pamphlet, and you'll be wise. And because the culture is young people are stupid enough and shallow enough to actually believe those things. Right now, you have no choice but to be a whore to information. Then, when you become tired of bending over for information, you sit somewhere and you become a whore to knowledge. You sit together, you sit with all the information, you put them on the table and you say, okay, let me piece together the life of Karl Marx. Let me look at his husband or his wife, his kids, 18th, 19th century, scientific revolution, the death of religion, the rise of the Industrial Revolution, money, capitalism. Let me understand a few things about the young Hegelians, what it means to be a romantic philosopher. Okay. And then at a certain point you realize you know all this stuff, but it just doesn't mean anything to you. But for that to happen, 20, 30 years need to go by. And then when you have enough disgust about yourself, like any other addiction, if you're lucky, maybe some wisdom will come to you. If you're maybe a little lucky, at least you'll die knowing that knowledge doesn't mean anything. If you're very unlucky, you'll just write a few books. Does that? I'm sorry. Is it time? Her little cousins.
If you get the explanation from me, I'll get with them if you need it.
It's good to see you, Leah. See you tomorrow. Remember, if you ever need to use the office, just text me. Okay. I leave at 10:15. Okay. Any other questions or comments before we... Yes? Anyone? Andrew. Sebastian.
Do you think that everything we do is inherently selfish?
Yeah. I say yes to my wife all the time, and it's not because I love her. I just don't want to sleep on the sofa. And I want to go home, and I want the home environment to be friendly, not hostile. Do you like me? You have to say yes, because your grade depends on it. You have to be selfish. Now, here are a couple of things you need to understand about selfishness. Matt. Of course. Last night, my wife wasn't home, and the kids were away. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go to a coffee shop and read a book. Not really, but just a coffee shop. And as I'm sitting and reading a book or just holding a book, this 20-year-old comes to me. Long brown hair, beautiful blue eyes. Her name was Jasmine. Like basmati rice. She said, I think I know you from a past life. I said, yes, I feel the same way. Please sit. For a moment, is that Tariq? Tariq. Hi,
Professor,
how
I'm
are
so
you?
sorry.
You want to come in to teach together?
No.
Are you sure?
It's unpolished. I have to
No,
practice.
it's okay. Just, you want to get to know these people? You want to say hello?
Oh, yes, okay. I'll say hello. Good morning, everyone. Sorry about the distraction and the interruption. My name is Tariq. I'm the Dean of Social Sciences. If there's anything you need, actually, no. They go to the other dean now. Oh, I'm so.
I need to come and talk to you.
Okay,
10:15 is good?
no problem.
Are you sure?
Absolutely,
Okay.
anytime.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about the interruption, everyone. Enjoy.
So, as I was saying, Jasmine Basmati was sitting, across the table from me. And then as we were talking, I realized that she keeps going like, hello, Abi. She was buttoned up all the way to her neck. And then the first button is loosened, and then the second is loosened, the third is loosened. You came at a bad time, but it's okay. And all of a sudden I realized it's like all the way here. And for a moment there I said, Amir, you're not married. And you certainly don't have kids. You don't even know if they're yours. And then she looks at me and she says, I don't live very far from here. I said, okay. So I realized that, last night was relatively cold, so I held her hand simply to keep her warm. She opens the door, we walk in, and I realized that, this is the wrong self that's in play. This particular self that is enamored by this 20-year-old will have lots of pleasure. I mean, I'm from the Middle East, which means that we like the Energizer Bunny. 5, 10, 15, 20 hours. I mean, talk about profound experiences and the wisdom you can extract from it. But all of a sudden, as I was about to engage, this other self came up. It was a more evolved, a more mature, a more cautious self. Amir, she is 20. Amir, you're 63. Amir, you've been here before. You've done this 1,000 times. Is it worth your marriage? Is it worth, if you've seen or read the book, The Death of a Salesman, is it worth Chucky to all of a sudden walk in and see you with this strange woman and then forever hating you? So when you talk about selfishness, the question is, which self are you referring to? Imagine that you know that the essay for this class is due tomorrow, and you know what you need to do. Sebastian, you love your parents, you love the future you've imagined for yourself, which is you want to go to Stanford or Yale or Oxford, right? And you have these wonderful friends. Party, drugs, alcohol, lots of sex with animals. And they're both tempting. Now, usually we desire the path of least resistance. We don't like to sacrifice too much. It's too painful. I mean, you have to understand when an alcoholic or a drug addict, any kind of an addict that's in a negative, says to him or herself, I want to quit, they do so for a day, but they realize that the temptation is far too great and the sacrifices are far too hefty. So they go back. That's the only world they know. Okay? And so your friends call. If the wrong Sebastian comes up, you're going to go to the party and you're going to get a 0 for this class, which means that you graduating from Laney will be delayed by a semester. Your parents will lose a little trust in you, a little faith in you, will doubt you. So yes, it's great to be selfish. The question is, which self? Now, it's going to take people a long, long time to figure that out. You know, I mean, look at the men in this room. Look at them. Disgusting. First, because biologically and psychologically, it takes men a long time to figure things out. I mean, I don't know these days if women are any better, but that's besides the point. Okay? That, consider this movie star, Van Damme. Have you heard of him? So Van Damme has been married maybe 6 or 7 or 8 or 9, 10 times. His current wife was his first wife. In other words, he gets married, he says, I don't like this girl. Divorces her, marries another one. Divorces that, marries another one. Divorces that, marries another one. And there comes a point where he says, you know what? I've gone through this stuff enough. You know, that there comes a point where you realize that you're looking for a self that can find stability. You don't like chaos too much. Once in a while, it's exciting. Okay. So I think for the first 20, 30, 40, 50 years of your life, you worship the wrong self. And the self is nothing but a set of ambitions and desires that you have. You know, when you read some books, when you go through enough being broken by life in a variety of different ways, and when you realize these other pursuits didn't really pan out well for you, this other part of you comes to the surface and say, you know what, maybe you should think twice about ABCD. You know, I mean, look, we have Honest, we have Nathan, we have Tyler, we have a few other people in this room who are no longer 18 or 19 or 20. I mean, these are people who've been through a few things. You know, they thought that if they drop out of school at the age of 18, they take this particular path, they'll be successful. And life slaps them a few times, they just don't get it. They slap them a few more times, still don't get it. At a certain point, they look themselves in the mirror and they say, you know what, fuck this shit. I'm going to go back to school. You know, and that's a good self. But this good self is a result of being punished for about 20 years. So is it good to be selfish? Absolutely. Will.
Question?
You had a question, right?
Oh, yeah. What is it also important asking question opinions?
I'll tell you a story. Can I tell you a story? There was this Indian girl many, many years ago. She was a friend of ours. She was very, very attractive. She was like Ashwara Rai. She's like basmati rice. Long and beautiful. And you know what happens when you are attractive? You have power. Everyone out there wants to be around you. And so she had been in like 10 relationships. At the age of 30, she was just exhausted. So, and she got depressed, you know. I mean, first you come from a very traditional environment. Your sisters are married. Your mom was married when she was 15. She had you when she was 12. And you say to yourself, what the hell happened to me? So she says, you know what? I'm going to take a break from dating men. So at a certain point, she sits and she writes down all the qualities that she wants in a man. And she had about like 15 bullet points. And then she sends this note to her friends. And then she says to them, if you find a man with such qualities, give me a call. And so after about 6-7 months, she receives a call from a friend that I have a coworker. He seems very nice. He's also Indian. I think he has some of the things you're looking for. They go out on a date. And as they have conversations, she keeps checking these boxes. What she doesn't know is that he also has a sheet of paper, and he also is checking out both boxes. 3 months later, they get married. 6 months into the marriage, she's diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Your neurons have a condom. You know, they're protected by myelin sheets. And when they're protected, messages go around very, very fast from your brain to the various parts of your body. Once the myelin sheets are contaminated, once they're destroyed, messages are delayed. You want to go there, right? But if your leg does not receive a message, it's like you have no bones, you fall. Okay. And she had a very severe case of MS. And so this man takes care of her. And one day, she gets out of this bathtub, looks at this man and says, I'm really sorry for ruining your life. And he says, well, you're the most beautiful woman I've ever been with. And I don't know if you know much about MS. The drugs that you have to take, they do horrible things to your physical body. Okay. Now, long story short, why would anyone have a list of qualities? Initially, all of us in this class imagine that we know exactly where we're going and what we're doing. And the truth is we don't. Everybody is winging it. We're all winging it. And it takes you a long time to come to realize that all the roads you have taken have been dead ends. And now you sit back and you say, okay, what is the best road to take? Now that's a great question. Now you don't have the answer, because if you did, you'd be there already. That's why you read books. That's why you go to therapy. That's why you go to church. That's why you talk to your father, to your mother, to elders. Because for the first time after 20, 30, 40 years, you've come to this realization. You are incompetent. And that's a great place to be. Now, the tragedy of that is, if you're asking this question from someone who is equally incompetent, you know, kind of like the New Testament verse, the blind will lead you into a ditch, you know. So, it takes a long time to be able to ask good questions. So.
In a world guided by selfish, in a world guided, sorry, I just got overstrapped. I'm not contagious. Been on antibiotics. In a world guided by selfish intent, is altruism possible, or is it equally guided by selfishness?
I think all of us in this class have moments, you know. I mean, a couple of things. Do you have children?
No.
You do. So one of the things that happens to people who have kids, like you have sex with a companion for some stupid reason, and the outcome is sex. I mean, the outcome is, you get pregnant. And remember, most of us, unless you happen to be like a little older, children are not planned. And I think, as the Greek poets would say, only unhappy women desire kids. Men usually try to stay away from that as long as possible, but eventually they say yes because they need to keep the woman around. So you have sex, you realize that you've missed your cycle, you go to CVS, you buy or you steal a test kit, you pee on it, and it's positive, you're pregnant. And you carry this thing for about 9 months. And then it comes out. And it doesn't say, you know what, this woman who's been carrying me needs some rest. No, you scream and you cry. You want to be held and you want to be pampered. The moment you're born, you behave selfishly. You poop, you scream. I mean, this woman had just gone through 5 hours of breathing deeply. She's exhausted. Her body aches. But you as an infant don't give a shit. So remember, the moment you're born, selfishness comes with you. Okay? So that's the first thing you need to understand. We have no choice but to be selfish. There is something about your organism that tries to protect itself. Now, just in case any of you in this class have any addictions to anything out there, addiction is a living organism. It is selfish. It lives inside you. It will do anything and everything it possibly can to protect itself. It will sabotage every fucking path that you want to take to change your life. It won't let you. You gotta kill it. So everything that lives inside you is a living organism, and its only function is survival. People are in abusive relationships for years. But fear of being alone, fear of not having money, fear of getting depressed and becoming an outcast in their community, those are living organisms that keeps them in the relationship. Once in a while, something happens. You're driving home, the light is red, you're eating your In-N-Out burger, and there's a guy or a gal standing with a banner. Got 25 kids, no rent, no money, nothing. And you don't really care about the story. Something about your eyes meeting her eyes. And you may not even be aware of this. But something about you says, if it was a man, I wouldn't give. But it's a woman, I will give. If it was a young woman, I wouldn't give. But because it's an older woman, I will give. So inside you, in a very unconscious way, all these games are being played. I mean, you are a political animal without really knowing. And so it happens to be like you have 20 bucks in your pocket. You were supposed to, I don't know, buy some flowers for some stupid person. And you say, you know what? I'm just going to give the 20 away. You know. And at that particular moment in time, and it's like a gift. It's what we say, barakat. It's magical. It happens, it comes without you knowing, and it goes without you knowing and being aware. For that moment, there's an opening. Something about you, crucifies all the things that are selfish about you. And you throw yourself into the wind and you say, you know what, I'm just going to give it away. And then something really interesting happens. The gates shut and you become Tyler again. And you say, that was the only 20 I had. How could you be so goddamn stupid? And then you realize that human beings kind of are conflicted animals. You know, you want sex, but you also want love. You want relationship, but you also want commitment. You want commitment, but you don't want politics. You want politics, but you hate being constrained. So, and that's the world we live in. You're selfish, you're also altruistic. There's a good amount of hell inside you. You also have moments that's like paradiso. And there is no escape from it. You know, and somehow you have to make peace with both parts of you. Now the trick is this, I think. I don't think people like Jesus Christ or Socrates or Malcolm X are without flaws. I think they're very human. The only difference between someone like Malcolm and me, or someone like a Socrates and me, is Socrates is 90% the spirit of philosophy and 10% human. Me, on the other hand, I am 2% philosophy and 98% sack of shit. I'm more of a human than a philosopher, which means that I express more human qualities. I am more grounded. I am more political. I'm more clever and cunning and deceiving. That's the only difference. Now, do I desire to be like a Mahatma Gandhi? Absolutely. Am I willing to pay the sacrifice? If I had the passion, probably. But I don't have the passion. Now, in a culture such as this, they'll advertise to you, yeah, if you go A, B, C, D places, you can purchase the passion. It doesn't work that way. No one can make the grass grow by pulling it. You know, do you play soccer?
Me? No.
Do you know much about soccer? Do you know Cristiano Ronaldo?
Yes.
See? You know soccer. That's all you need to know. I want to be like a Cristiano Ronaldo. I just don't know what magic he has. I want to be like a Messi. I want to be like a Magnus Carlsen in the chess game. You know? I want to be like a Bjorn Borg. I want to be like a Muhammad Ali. I want to be like a Socrates. And the truth is, some people are just born with magic. The rest of us just worship them. And there is nothing wrong with you never being a Socrates. Just hang out with him. Elham, anything? What was your name, Lauren? Anything?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think of the Buddhist philosophy of all human emotions stemming from fear and love?
Can I give you like a brotherly advice? Do not ever listen to people in power, whether it's Buddha or Donald Trump. If you come to the conclusion that there is a piece of magic inside Buddha, and I don't know where he got it, okay? And let me tell you what that magic is. He lives a very comfortable life. And he lives in a very beautiful culture. And just in case you don't know what a culture is nothing but this pan of experiences turned into stories, and then after every story, there is a meaning to it. Okay? Culture is nothing but a GPS to life. And when a culture loses that GPS, what you have is America. Okay? Now, you don't have kids yet, but once you do, by the time you have kids, young boys and young girls will occupy the same bathroom. Because we no longer believe in gender. Everything is fluid. Okay? And somehow you have to convince this 5-year-old that this is normal. So as the culture loses stories, we have to create new ones. And for a story to actually make sense and be beneficial and healthy for its people, it takes time. It's like turkey. It needs to be in the oven for 10 hours. Africa is the way it is because it has 5,000 years of stories. Middle East, 5,000 years. Okay? What was your question?
What are your general thoughts on the Buddhist philosophy?
Yeah. So the Buddha, he goes out and he sees someone like me. Lost a lot of hair, parts of it gray, wrinkles. I cough now because I'm sick. And he looks at me and says, what the hell is wrong with you? I'm old. I'm young. Yeah, I'm old. I'm young. And after a while, I just get tired of his antics and I say, you piece of shit, you're going to get old too. Now, here's the thing. My comment to him that you're going to get old, he actually internalizes that statement. He says, man, I'm going to get old. It means that I will have more time behind me than ahead of me. How do you do time in a way that you don't regret in the future? It's not just about old age. It's about losing abilities. It's about getting sick. It's about eventually dying and being forgotten. So while alive, how do you use your time? What sort of conversations do you have? What classes do you take? Where do you go? What books do you read? How do you treat your body? How do you treat your parents? Who does that? You're going to be a fucking weirdo. And who's a weirdo? The Buddha. When? 3,000 years ago. It's only now you write books about the Eightfold Path. Some bullshit book. And then what happens, because we are so hungry and needy, we take these ideas and we actually believe that we can apply them to life. And it doesn't work because we're not the Buddha. I didn't sacrifice my wife the way he did. I didn't sacrifice a child the way he did. I didn't sacrifice my culture the way he did. I sacrificed nothing. I'm just a fucking thief. I go somewhere, buy a book, get an idea, and spit it back out there. Fear. There are two different categories of fear. One is socialized, the other is instinctual. We have been around for a few million years. Touch a hot stove. You won't do it again. That's the wisdom that lives inside your body. Go to a hot stove, touch it, and your companion will be pain. Pain will rob you of rest and comfort. That's all you need to know. It's instinctual. It's cold out there. It's freezing. You don't need a fucking book or Jesus Christ to come down and tell it to you. Your body will tell it to you. It's freezing. So some fears are natural and you need to have them. They're good for you. Some are socialized. You go out with someone who's experienced some abuse. And every time you're nice to them, they fuck you over some more. Learn that. Walk away from that relationship. Okay. There are some fears, such as the one that lives inside me. Look at my skin color. Look at the way I look. I need to have my documents on my cell phone. Just in case ICE pays me a visit, I need to show it to them. I am a citizen. Some fears revolve around paranoia. Paranoia, once it gets there, if it gets there, okay, it means that now you have a good amount of your own imagination at work. And once you're in the paranoia stage, you probably have the power to sabotage almost everything that you touch. Okay. So some fears are actually quite good and healthy. Some you learn because life has taught you and you need to be cautious. And others are there and you need help. You need someone to kind of train you. Love. And maybe we can do this on Thursday. And English really is not the best of languages to do philosophy or to talk about any of this stuff. But nevertheless, that's the only tool we have. There are steps that you take in you falling in love. It doesn't begin that way. Almost everything in life, everything, whether it's a video game or you loving Angelina Jolie, the initial step is ludus, lust, attraction. When you spend time with the object of attraction over and over and over and over again, and when your imagination begins to work over and over and over again, fantasizing about the object of attraction, one morning you'll wake up and you say, shit, I'm in love. You can love someone for their body. You can love someone because they keep talking about their traumatic past. It creates for wonderful conversations. You can love someone because they're like Noam Chomsky. They have all this wonderful information and they express it in such animated ways. And you can love someone for their spiritual qualities. The easiest path of love, you love someone's physical body. And then emotions will be created. And because you loved for the wrong reasons, conflict will appear. And then your intellect will try to solve the emotional crisis. And with every issue, your attachment becomes stronger until you realize this is just a fucked up relationship. Then love becomes hate. And the opposite of love is not hate, but when you become indifferent towards the person that you once loved. The best kind of fear, Tyler, if you have had a father who has loved you and have always wanted the best for you, but you strayed, that's the man that you need to love. And that's the man you need to fear. Because should you lose his respect, he will abandon you. And then you will have nothing.
What about the inverse of that? The father who loses the son's respect.
You ever watch that movie, Ray Donovan? It's on Prime Plus or Paramount Plus. The father was a drunk. He much didn't really care about none of his kids. He had like 5 or 6 or 7. He was a womanizer, slept with anyone and anything. There was a priest. The priest was Catholic, and Catholics are really good for only one thing. And so this kid was abused. All the brothers were abused. A long story short, this kid hated his father. Near the end of the movie, when the father was killed, he was shot, Ray Donovan sits and cries and says, I forgot to tell him how much I love them. Here's the thing you need to understand about parental and children relationship. Always go back to the commandment in the Old Testament, the 5th one, honor thy parents. Ask any person in this room who's got kids and we'll tell you. When you're pregnant, when you are going to be a father, okay, you really create these fantasies in your head. You're going to be the best mom, you're going to be the best dad, you're going to do A, B, C, D. And fantasies are baptized. In other words, life has not yet reached down to contaminate them. And the problem with fantasies or dreams is that they will always have their wings clipped. Any of you in this class who've ever been in love, you know what I am talking about. You know, you worship, adore this other person. You will fantasize about having children with this person. At a certain point, because of our psychological capacity and physical capacity, love will eventually just dim its powers because we can't take too much of it, okay? And its wings gets clipped and the politics of life gets in. You need to understand that as a mother, as a father, you only have so much energy to tell your kid in a very civilized way, can you just lower your voice, please? Can you eat with a spoon, please? Can you not go into the mud? I just bought those fucking shoes for you. You know, can you do A, B, C, D? Just please, 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 please. You do it 10 times. The 11th time, man, you scream. You need to understand that fantasies within the realm of human capacity, they will always get tarnished. Always. No parent has kids saying, you know what? The moment I have a child, I'm going to abuse the hell out of them. It doesn't work that way. It never does. You need to understand the complexities of life. You don't honor your physical parents. You honor the dreams that used to live inside them. Look, none of the people who teach classes enjoy coming to class and being a bore. Okay? I think all the Supreme Court, all the justices out there, they went to law school for one reason. You know, they went out there in the world, they realized that there's a good amount of unfairness and injustice, and they want to make some changes. But they got drunk with power. And little by little, if you've seen the movie with Al Pacino and Jason or John Cusack, he was a mayor. And there comes a point, Al Pacino, the mayor, looks at this young politician and says, listen, when I was young, I was very much like you. I had fire in the belly, create justice and make New York a great city. But you realize to make anything work, you sleep with this person and then you sleep with that person and then you have to make a dealing with that person. Before you know it, you have no idea why you got into this business in the first place. Shit happens. The problem is if you take the approach I just suggested, not only must you carry your own emotions, but you must also carry the emotions that lived inside your father and how life clipped those emotions. And as a young 10-year-old or 20-year-old having access to this knowledge, it's too much. And the easiest path is, I hate my father. Because the other path is just far too difficult. I'm sorry to have taken so much of your time. It's good to see all of you. Take good care. And see you Thursday. Leo, how are you?